The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jen Durrell.
Oh, hey, baby.
Hey, baby.
Happy Halloween to you and to all of our Talking Weird listeners.
Yeah.
And I won't be leaving this mask on.
Yeah,
A, I'm muffled.
right.
And
Yeah,
B,
just a little bit, and then you can't
really
see what the hell you're doing.
Shit. I can't see what I'm doing either. There you go. As I was saying to both you and our guest a minute ago in the green room, I'm the guy who always goes to the Halloween party with the mask on, and then he's in the door with a beer in his hand and the mask's off for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Not that I've been to a Halloween party for probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years before my daughter was born anyway.
It's been forever for me too.
Since I've been at the Halloween party. While I take this mask off, we have something very exciting, and you might want to tell our audience about it. You have some of your paranormal equipment set up behind you. Could you talk them through it while I remove the skelly mask?
Okay. So I thought it would be really fun to just kind of have my equipment on behind me. So if you see anything, you can comment. So actually the K2, I kind of wonder about that piece of equipment, but it's going off already. So it's my finger. It's right there. And then above it, you see the blue, that's another EMF meter, but it's also got temperature. It'll make a sound. And then there's 2 cat balls next to it. And then I have down here a silver flashlight, and above it is a red one. So that's just in case they actually light up, and then we can ask yes or no questions.
Well, the veil is at its thinnest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a time of the year where things prowl our land, looking in at windows to catch the unprepared. Unprepared. It's actually Halloween already in Australia, my home country, although I consider America my home now, of course. I love this country, but it's also my parents' wedding anniversary. Can you believe that? They were married on Halloween. Yes.
That's cool.
So happy anniversary. They always listen. God bless them, my mother and Alan. So happy anniversary. I hope you're enjoying.
Happy anniversary.
We hope you're enjoying the day. You know what we should do before we bring our spectacular guest on? Are there any messages yet there? Because I told people we'd address messages before we got into the swing of things.
We've got 2 people. We got Bart.
Thank you, Bernard. Great to have you back.
Hey, babies. We got Ed.
Ed, the third baby. We have a guest challenging your dominance at the moment, Ed. I think you're in 4 episodes, and tonight's guest this will be her 3rd episode. So, yeah, when she's on next, it's going to be 4 for 4. Eek. By the way, as we said, and we're very serious about this, if anybody out there is in the Halloween spirit, as we are in a costume, you can go and post a photo of yourself if you want to, in your costume, on the Talking Weird Facebook page below tonight's show. Like, you'll see the link for tonight's show. It has a picture. It's the Halloween episode. There's a pumpkin instead of our normal little one-eyed alien man. You'll be able to see it very clearly. Post a photo of yourself in costume there if you're in costume. And what we'll do is
nice there.
Thanks, Shay. Yeah, it's my skelly head.
That and red.
Yeah, Ed wants to be on again. Anyways, we were saying post that photo of yourself in costume, and Jen and I and tonight's wonderful guest will vote at the end. If anybody shares any photos in costume, who's the best, has the best costume, and I will send you a Talking Weird t-shirt. I'll PM you and get your size, and I'll send you a Talking Weird t-shirt. Yeah.
Work.
So yeah, that should be fun. And I was saying to you before we had our guest on, if for any reason there's a draw, if there's lots of them and it has to be a deciding vote, I'll do the Peppermint Patty and A Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, and cast the deciding vote myself. So, but that's only should that come to that. So please, we'd love to see photos of anybody in Halloween array tonight. Anyway, without any further ado, I think we should probably roll into introducing our guest. I had to take my skelly glove off because this glove is pre-touchscreen. I couldn't control my little system here. So anyway, tonight's guest, who I'm delighted to have back on. We've had her on before for Valentine's Day, and we've also had her on for St. Paddy's Day. She's absolutely fantastic. And she's a mostly fictional character who has dedicated herself to the telling of tales and spirits, and the tales of spirits, and the spirit of telling a good tale. She has a disturbing and entertaining knowledge of both the supernatural and the best libations to accompany them. She resides in the city of Milwaukee, a few hours to my south, arguably the best place on earth to hone the skills of both drinking and storytelling. She is also the co-host of T's Weird Week podcast. So I'm delighted to welcome back to Talking Weird, the one, the only Heidi Erickson.
Hey, Heidi.
Hello, friends.
Halloween, Heidi.
Oh, blessed Samhain to you, friends. Oh, I've missed you so much. How are you? Have you seen the dog man up in your little cabin up there?
I see. You know what? It's funny. I don't see things up here, but there's a story. I'm not a dog man anyway. There's a story in one of Linda Godfrey's books about a werewolf, and I won't say my town. I don't want all of my millions of fans crushing my little homestead. Anyway, it's near. I'm not even in a town. It's the town closest to me. And there's a story in one of Linda Godfrey's books about a 1950s like werewolf, but an American in London type aesthetic werewolf, like a good ginormous wolf type, rather than a howling walking on two legs, but terrorizing a farm. And I think the farmer drove into town or something, and like was saying, "This is enormous werewolf" or something.
I think if you're coming from Australia, the best place to settle in Wisconsin is here in the North Woods, where you are. I think you made a good choice because this is where all the monsters are. That's true. I recently just discovered that there's a goat man here, a frog man. Did you know?
I knew the goat man. I didn't know frog man.
No, there's a goat man and a frog man, a dog man. There's a lot of men who are also partly animals, and that's somewhat to do with the beer concentration here, certainly.
There's a lizard man, like in a town not that far from me called Medford. There's a report of a lizard man appearing on the middle of a road one night.
It's true. It's true. Blessed Samhain to you, my friends. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. It is back in my old country, the Gaelic countries, Scotland and Ireland and the like. They'd be settling down in their little huts of wattles and clay, worrying about the fairies that would come for them.
That's fair. The fae are not to be fucked with, and I think that's fair. That's very, very fair.
But I'm sure you have all kinds of wonderful Halloween tales for us tonight. I'm so excited. Jen and I have been hyped about this episode.
Yeah,
I actually was. My big concern about this episode was what we were going to talk about. There's so much to discuss. First of all, I'd like to point out that I came from a very, not the best Halloween party I've ever been at, but one of the best Halloween parties I've ever been at to join you. Originally, there was supposed to be 50 people who were going to contribute to this podcast because they were very excited that I was speaking to you. Jen, you especially. I showed them your photograph and they were like, Jen is hot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. No,
thank you.
Like paranormal hot, which is a degree higher than regular hot. I'd like to point out that's like Dana Scully hot.
Oh, I like that compliment. Thank you.
She's definitely
Dana Scully hot. That's amazing. And I was like, yes, I'm going to talk to these people about Samhain. And they were like, I have so many opinions on that. But both of my partners were like, what if you sat in your kitchen and talked to Jen so that there weren't 15 people telling Jen how hot she was? Not that Dean is not also hot. Dean.
Thank you.
Also hot in a libertarian sort of way. And I'd like to point that out. But I felt like for Samhain, it was really important that I do a traditional thing, which is to drink heavily. So, Dean, where's your drink? Dean, Jen? Are we?
Mine.
So we.
We're
Yeah.
vibing with you. Don't you worry.
Yes.
Spectacular.
And I feel a small degree of guilt pulling you out of a Halloween party. Mind you, I haven't been in a Halloween party for literally probably 6 years. So.
If I had known, I would have invited you. We had a bonfire.
Oh,
We did a
wow.
ritual at the beginning.
Ooh,
Good
Yeah.
grief.
that's fun.
That's the real Halloween.
No, it's true because it's funny in Wisconsin. So many people from here have roots in Scandinavian blood
Germany,
and Irish blood.
Yeah.
All of these people are very deeply connected to the Fae. And of course, Samhain comes from the Fae tradition, from mostly Celtic tradition, where very naughty things happen on Samhain. In fact, in many parts of the world, this is called Mischief Night.
Just quickly, I'm sorry to cut in, but Bernard Weekend, one of our regular listeners, says that America wants to know what you're drinking, Heidi. So I won't cut in with many fan comments tonight or listener comments, but I have to ask that.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that tonight I've had a lot to drink. What I love about being on Talking Weird is that Jen and Dean both appreciate the value of alcohol and storytelling. I love that about both of you. I'm drinking an Oktoberfest from Lakefront Brewery right now. I was originally drinking a pumpkin beer. I like to point out that I am actually credentialed in beer, where I have actual credentials where, like, you could, I don't know. I'm sure I could go to lunch on these credentials in many places. I don't, because capitalism. But pumpkin beer is legit. If you want to talk about Samhain and witches, which I do because that's hot, beer was originally brewed by women. And what we think of as witches, pointy hats, cauldrons, black cats, that's all from women who brew beer.
Huh.
Right?
I did not know that.
No, it's true. What you think of as like witches in cauldrons, that was where they brewed their beer. In great big vats where they brewed their wort, and the cats they kept were to keep the mice away from all their grain. And the great big tall hats they were so when they entered taverns, people knew that they had beer. They bought their beer from these witches with the tall hats.
Huh.
Most of what they put into beer was whatever the fuck they felt like. And a lot of it was grain and herbs they felt would keep the grain from going rotten, like mugwort, chimney soot, menstrual blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that tastes. I've not quite gone that way yet. One day when I'm feeling very spicy, I will brew a beer of that variety. Dean, you should know that the forefront of menstrual blood and yeast brewed beer comes from Australia. The women who are brewing beer based on menstrual yeast are all Australian because the Australian bitches know what's up.
Great.
When you live every day where you could put your shoes into your feet into a shoe where a spider could destroy you, those are the women who are like, I'm going to take my menstrual blood and brew a beer that would challenge Satan. So all these pumpkin beers are very traditional, and people who talk shit about pumpkin beers don't know what beer is about. So I had several pumpkin beers, some Fireball, which is very American.
Gotta have that.
You must.
Good stuff.
This is Wisconsin, so I actually was at a party where we were giving candy to children, and then to the adults we were giving shots, Jello shots. Yes, that were made with Fireball and apple cider. That's why I moved here. The first Halloween I spent in Wisconsin, I brought my small child. He was 4 or something. And he got Snickers bars and M&Ms and what have you. And I got shots of whiskey brewed with cinnamon or apple or whatever. And I was like, this is like the beer commercial dream of my dreams. We drank a lot of that. So drinking is traditional for Halloween, is what I'm saying.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Drinking and Halloween. Do you feel
Yeah,
good?
I feel
very good about that.
We didn't have, just as a quick aside, we didn't have Halloween parties in Australia. Well, I did because I was a Halloween obsessed since I was a child, but there was no Halloween celebrated in Australia by probably the vast or even a sizable portion of the population until I was well into my 20s. Like
So
nothing.
was it more of an adult holiday then?
No, it was an American thing. When I first took friends of mine trick-or-treating when I was a kid, I don't know, I was less, certainly under 10, maybe 8. And I had friends over for a Halloween party, which was unheard of. We went trick-or-treating in my neighborhood. And people were opening their door. We'd say trick or treat because I'd seen Happy Days and Charlie Brown and all those, and Halloween, the film, the original John Carpenter's film. And people would say, "What? No, trick or treat. Oh, that's that stupid American thing. Get out of here." I'm not kidding you. Yeah, that was so. So it was always a weird. It was an alternative holiday in Australia in some ways for a long time, which made it a little more fun because not everybody did it. You know, it seemed a little dangerous.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Dean. You're from Australia, the place where everything can kill you, which is very Halloween. Very like the dust, moths, right? Like anytime you open your door, like death just waiting there for you.
I'd have funnel web spiders on my bedroom floor all the time. In my shower, I remember being in my shower one time and I almost trod on it. It reared up because they don't run away. They actually rear up like a tiger tank that wants to attack you. They're like, they're like a military vehicle that just keeps going because it thinks it's indestructible. Totally naked in my shower. It was terrifying.
Oh my God, Dean, I still want to, Jen, what if we abduct Dean and go to Australia, okay, and just like have Arbor Day or like, like something really benign and just make it horrifying. What do you think? Like
I'm in for that. Yes, I've always wanted to go to Australia.
Right, I've never been, or New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand. Yeah, beautiful,
wonderful. Let's go. Okay, so in preparing for this show, because Dean, you contacted me and you're like, Heidi, would you like to do the Halloween show? And I was like, sure. There's so much to talk about. Australia as a continent, as a whole island, independent of the whole rest of the Western world, was settled, yes, as a prison colony, as a penal colony for Europe, was it not? Like, right. They were like, you were so naughty that we're going to send you to Australia.
I never thought about penal roots as hot until you're biting your knuckles down.
I love that about Australia. I love that. Wait, who's talking to us? Jeff Addis. Beer and menstrual blood, but have had to admit, don't like Aussie. I don't like Aussie accents. Dean seems okay.
Then he recovers it.
Well, thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, Jeff. Aren't you precious? Okay.
You should grow up with nothing but Aussie accents.
I love
you really dislike them. That's
very sexy.
What I like about Australian accents is that they are, predominantly these were people who were from England and Ireland and were naughty. So naughty people got sent to Australia, which is fair because Australia is a little scary. Like, you're from there, Dean. You know it's a little scary. You open your closet and there could be what? Snakes, spiders, fucking emu. There was a whole war. Like, Australia is terrifying. It's a terrifying place, which is what I love about it. Honestly, that's the thing about Australia that makes me buy lingerie, is that it's just terrifying. It's a scary, scary place. Just like, you could just go to make eggs in the morning and there could be like the deadliest spider alive. I love that.
Well, here's another quick funnel web story for you, just because I have so many. When I grew up, we had, as many people do in the Australian suburbs, a pool, because it's so hot there. It's not like Wisconsin where pools freeze, so nobody has them. In Australia, lots of backyards have pools. But funnel webs play dead on the bottom of the pool and have a little bubble that they can breathe in or something. And so they pretend they're dead. just so you'll have contact with them, and then they'll give you the business.
You know
and
how
not the good
disturbing
business.
it is that there's just an animal that will fuck with you just to see if you'll die?
Yeah,
Teen,
it's the
that's
fun of it.
terrifying.
It'll do
You
it.
don't do that here. There's like cows and shit. That's it. Like that's, and then you're up in your cabin in the middle of nowhere where there's like, and you're like, the dog man is here. I was like, the dog man? Didn't you grow up with like koalas who would drop out of trees
Drop bears, yeah.
and like be all cuddly and then rip your face guts out? Like what the shit? Honestly, terrifying. The people who settled Australia, right, were English and Irish, because the English hated the Irish, and they would, at any given opportunity, arrest them and take them and be like, "You're Irish, and that's bad, and we're going to send you to Australia."
Well, my stepfather has a big portion of Irish, much far more Irish in him than I have in me, and he's listening. He's listening now. But here's the weird thing: the fairy faith didn't come with those, as far as I'm aware, and I'm not totally removed from Scottish or Irish heritage. I have, I'm part of both. The fairy faith, I think, stayed more of part of at least the Halloween tradition here. While in Australia, maybe it was forgotten or something. Like it wasn't anything I was really, it wasn't anything I was conscious of other people really thinking about in Australia.
To be fair, the Aboriginal people in Australia have their own faith.
That's true.
We talked about this last time we were here. And what's fascinating about Halloween, about Samhain, is that it exists in every culture. Now, if you take Samhain, what it is as we celebrate it in America, this is a Celtic tradition. And it is a Celtic tradition that is antithetical to St. Patrick. I love St. Patrick's Day. It is the third most drinkinest day in Wisconsin, and I can't argue with that. They, dye the rivers green? They're like fantastic. St. Patrick drove all the
snakes into the sea.
Snakes. Yeah, sure. Good job. What they were talking about when they were talking about St. Patrick driving all the snakes out of the sea was, of course, all the pagans out of Ireland. And the big guy that they were driving out was the main god of Ireland, who was also the god of Halloween, who was occasionally called Samhain. He was the guy who they worshipped before the Christians ever came, and he was the god of liminal spaces. This is a huge deal in America right now because witchcraft is having a moment. This is what I'm reading. Witchcraft is having a moment. And witchcraft is mostly about liminal spaces. It's about those spaces in between asleep and awake, in between conscious and subconscious, in between the dead and the living. And Samhain is the biggest part of that. I was making a joke earlier today about how there was going to be no Halloween clearance section because witchcraft is so popular now that everyone is about Halloween. The Celts believe that this time of year, which is between the vernal equinox, the summer equinox, and the winter equinox, is Halloween. So between Mabon and Yule is Halloween. It's a quarter celebration. This, like May Eve, which is the 1st of May, which is that celebration between the beginning of spring and the beginning of summer, is that time when the veil is thin. No matter what culture you come from, if you're a part of a Western culture, this is the time when the veil is thin, when the dead and the living commingle with each other, and when the Fae, which in Ireland and Scotland as well, were the Tuatha Dé Danann, which were the some people would argue the original gods of Scotland and Ireland, and to a degree, England. England wasn't as much a part of that because they were the first to be conquered by the Romans.
Just quickly, though, it's interesting because Shakespeare, perhaps our most famous literary figure from England, wrote A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is exactly about the Fae interconnecting, or the she, or whatever we want to call them, interconnecting with us in that middle period.
Yeah, the Tuatha Dé Danann is what they call that. And the she is also the name for the burial mounds, the great big mounds in Ireland and Scotland that are said to be the gateway between our world and the world of the she. Now, hell did not exist for the Celtic. For most tribal cultures, hell was not a real thing. There was a land of the living and the land of the dead and the liminal space in between. And if you were stuck as a dead person in that liminal space in between, you could be appeased on May Eve and on Samhain. That's where trick-or-treating came from. This idea that you would go from door to door pretending to be not just a dead person, but also a fae, because both of those people could transcend those lines between our world, the physical world, and this like non-physical place to exist. And that you would go from door to door and say, if you don't give me candy and raisins, I will fuck your shit up. And that's what the dead and the fae both did. And I really love this idea of the dead and the fae coming together as one team and being like, where are your raisins? Where are your raisins?
Do you think that's because there was a blurring in those cultures between? It's something I'm fascinated with is what the fairies actually were, or what the fae or the she actually were. Like, there's so many different theories. They were the dead, they were the angels who didn't take side, and either on Satan's side or on God and Michael's side, or they were this alternative species that lived in a realm which coincided with ours. So sometimes I think that the she or the fae were the dead, right?
Well, if you think about this, the original big god, who was the god of liminal spaces, and no matter what tribal culture you look at, the god or goddess of liminal spaces, whether it was Hecate or the Krudikan, the god of liminal spaces between being alive and being dead, between being awake and being asleep, they were always the big gods, the transitional gods. They were the ones that were worshipped the hardest, where they're like, we're going to roast a whole ass pig and also sacrifice 2/3 of our children and crops to make sure that you're not pissed off. Those were always like the gods. The Tuatha De Danann, I've always felt, if you subscribe to this idea that there were whole ass civilized cultures who existed before humanity. And the last time I was on, we talked about the Perry Reese map a little bit. This idea that there were civilized cultures who existed before humanity. I believe the Tuatha De Danann were part of that. And this idea that they were banished. Because if you look at Celtic mythology, on Samhain, everything important that happened in Celtic mythology happened on Samhain. Every big king of Ireland was dominated, was destroyed, was just like they sat down to play Mario Kart with the Tuatha De Danann, and they just got fucked up by the Dagobah, who were the Tuatha De Danann, because the Morrigan met up with them on Samhain night, and they did the dirty. And the Morrigan was like, I am the goddess of death and war, and I've just decided that because we did some things, you are going to win against the humans because they suck and we just banged, and there you go. I feel like the Tuatha De Danann were always representative of these, what do they call those gods in Mesopotamian times? Anunnaki. The Anunnaku. The Anunnaku and the Tuatha De Danann share so many characteristics, so many. Being winged beings, having this technology and this knowledge above and beyond mortal men, being able to go from one place to another instantaneously, having this knowledge of medicine, of the comprehension of nature. Like, I really feel like all those myths are archetypal, globally archetypal. And I feel like if you study the Tuatha De Danann and those myths, you understand maybe what the third age of man is like. Because according to the Dine, who are the Navajo people, and who most of the native people of America follow this kind of mythology in some form or another, they're so close to the Tuatha De Danann that you can even replace syllables in the stories, the names of their heroes, to match the exact same thing. Which brings me to the next thing. I like to point out to our listeners that Dina and Jen had no idea what I was going to talk about tonight. I was like, they're like, let's do Halloween. And I was like, absolutely. I went recently and saw Antlers. Did you guys see that?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it yet, though.
I don't want to brag, but like the paranormal conference of Milwaukee, we got advanced screening tickets.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that it was playing there, though. I was conscious that it was screening there.
I would have loved to gone, but it's just.
Well, if you guys would come and get naked and hooked up with me, you would have had pre-screening tickets too. But oh no, Dean's all up in his cabin, like writing the great American novel or whatever. And Jen, I presume you have like a very, very profitable OnlyFans / are also running like Fortune 500 company. But we did that here in Milwaukee. I hated it.
Oh.
No, I did. As a person with like very strong indigenous ties, I hated it because it was about the Wendigo.
Mm-hmm.
And what had happened was there was a film executive who had done so much coke that morning. He'd done so much coke. He was in his bathroom and he was like, right nostril, left nostril, and he was like, "Hey, you guys, did you ever hear of the Wendigo? It's having like a moment. Is Guillermo del Toro still on contract?" And then they like wrote a movie, which is sad because Wendigo, as we think of it, like Dean, if I say Wendigo, what do you picture? Like, what do you see?
Well, I know the common popular mythology is something which has deer antlers, but I'm also cognizant of the old. Who was the person who wrote the famous Wendigo story? Was it Algernon Blacknon, or what's his name?
It was Alan Schultz who wrote the original scary stories to tell in the dark that popularized the image that we think of when we see the Wendigo.
That's the one with the horns, right?
Yes, indeed. Here's the thing about it. Wendigo is a DNA myth, is a Navajo myth. A Wendigo in real life. If you can, I got into a huge fight on the internet, you guys. P.S. The internet is haunted. I'll get to that.
Oh, by the way, just quickly, and then I hate cutting in on you because your stuff's so fascinating, but there is a Wendigo story by Algernon Blackwood, and that's the one that I think first introduced me to the mythology. And it doesn't have a creature with antlers creeping. It's far bigger and weirder, and you'd love it actually. Heidi.
Yes,
you'd really
send it to me with nudes. I'm gonna need that plus
I'll find a link to it because it is available. I know it's like online somewhere. There's an audio. Actually, I know because I've listened to it. There's an audio version on YouTube, which is great to listen to. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just had to check. Like, did I remember that correctly? And yeah, I did. So
our conversations are so organic. It's just really French of us. I'm really proud. The DNA myth of the Wendigo, for those who are not familiar, is of a hunter. There are several stories. This is the most popular, who went out hunting with his hunting party in winter. A blizzard set in. They became starving, and this person resorted to cannibalism. As a result, he became this infested spirit who became hungrier the more he feasted. He was a cannibal, a zombie. The original Wendigo is like a giant, like Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade zombie floating through the trees of the deepest woods, just feasting on the souls and flesh of the living. That's the DNA myth. The way that we perceive it in popular culture is this horned being with the skull of a deer and deer's feet, hooved feet, and this like corpseified like body. That is not the Wendigo. What is important about this is not cultural appropriation, because I'm a horrible person and I don't care. The problem with this is that the image that we have of the Wendigo is actually the image of Cernunnos, which is a European myth, the myth of the wild god. Okay, so Shane is saying Wendigo is similar to skinwalkers, and yes, hypothetically, Wendigo is similar to skinwalkers, Shane, but the thing about it is it's not. For European Americans who live in America, we've combined those two myths together. This idea of breaking these cultural taboos, these ideas of superseding our hunger over our own desire, and creating cannibals of ourselves, creating monsters of ourselves. The idea of the horned being with the skull of a deer is actually a representation of popularly a Celtic god, but really it's popular throughout all of Europe, Eastern Europe, and even Russia, of the wild god, of Pan, of Cernunnos, yes, of the hoofed and horned god that ultimately became Satan when the Catholic Church took over paganism. Now, Pope Gregory the Fourth, the Fifth, I don't know. It was one of the Gregorys. He was a pope. He came in, and this guy knew marketing. Okay, he knew it inside and out. This guy would have killed the Wolf of Wall Street. He was a genius. He could have sold toothpaste to people with no teeth, shoes to people with no feet. He came in and he said, "Hey, do you know what pagans love? Pagan shit. You know what you should do? Take all the pagan shit and make it Christian shit. If there's a tree that is sacred to the pagan gods, go to that tree and be like, Jesus loves this tree. Jesus loves this tree so much. Like, Jesus is so hard for this tree. It's just fucking crazy." And let them continue to worship it, but in the name of Jesus, instead of in the name of Pan, Cernunnos, like whatever. And then they can continue their worship without having to convert specifically. And it'll just slowly become, Christianity, the way that Pepsi took over Minnesota. Like, it was a Coke state originally, but like Pepsi was like, what if we just made Pepsi floats instead of Coke floats? And then when people went to the drive-in, they could get Pepsi floats instead of Coke floats. That's what the Catholic Church did.
I have to just quickly interject because you're very much correct. The particularly the ascendancy of Mary in the Catholic Church was a way for them to imprint Mary upon goddess religion and goddess worship.
100%. Because there are more churches dedicated to Mary than there are dedicated to Jesus and all of the saints combined. Because originally this was a matriarchal religion. Samhain is the same way. Originally, this was a religion that was very matriarchal, and Samhain was very much about recognizing the people who had gone before us, right? The ancestors and what have you. The Catholic Church was like, what if? Think about it, you guys. Pause at this, and then like picture like a huge table in like a conference room. It's made of mahogany. Everyone is drinking very expensive coffee. There's a lot of cocaine. And there's a guy at the beginning who's like, what if? And then he rubs his nose because cocaine. And he's like, what if we just made this all about Jesus instead of about the original God King of Ireland? That guy rubbing his nose with his red tie, that was Pope Gregory. And he was like, what if we turn this God, who they might have, to be fair, sacrificed a couple of humans to? I mean, there was some human sacrifice involved, which is a little bit, I mean, the optics are not great, you guys. It was human sacrifice. Things happened. It was bad. During Samhain, like a king fell, 2/3 of the children were sacrificed. This was the time that livestock were called the last harvest before winter. So they bring in all the cows and then like maybe kill like 2/3 of them and turn them into sausage. I don't know, like what? I wasn't there. It was messy. It was really messy.
That's the Conal Cochran speech from Halloween 3 as well, about the hills running red with the blood of children and animals or something, right?
I love that you referenced that. So the last Halloween was not the last Halloween, which I have not seen yet, but I hear is just.
I haven't seen it either.
I haven't either.
I've heard it's gorgeous. The last Halloween, where they were making it about Jason was being worshipped by a cult of Thorn, right? They were worshiping this Celtic god.
Huh.
Yeah, they were referencing this Celtic god who was turned into a demon. In fact, he was so turned into a demon that according to the Catholic Church, he actually became a worm, which is WURM.
Like Virum, like dragon.
Like a dragon. He became a dragon. Do you know what he had? 12 followers made of gold. His 12 bronze followers who fell when St. Patrick came to defeat him. He was the god that was worshipped in liminal spaces, the original god king of Ireland. And then St. Patrick was like, absolutely not. We already have a dude who's got 12 guys. You're fucking fired. There's an imposter here. And St. Patrick drove him out or whatever, because all of the myths about St. Patrick are like the snakes, about him driving the pagans out of Ireland, which is a big deal because of all the places in Europe. Because it's not as though the Anglos and the Saxons and all of the other tribal peoples of Europe didn't have the same exact mythology. Every single mythology in the world has a harvest festival and has a festival which worships the liminal time between harvest and winter, which is the season of dead things, which doesn't have a god or like high king that is worshipped between the season of harvest and the season of dead things. Like that happened to everyone. Ireland just happened to get a dude named Paddy between the season of harvest.
Oh, wow. Sorry, excuse me.
Whoa. Whoa.
It's like going. Sorry.
Jen.
Stop.
What happened there?
Jen.
Notifications. They're paying. Yeah, I'm just like going, and then all of a sudden it goes straight to ours.
That's just creepy. I'm just saying it's creepy. I'd like to point out that Jen is a psychopomp. She is a creature that is also liminal. Is that wig, bitch? You're fucking killing it.
I can tell you keep looking at my girlfriend like you just like, yeah.
Yeah, I've already made out subliminally. That's already happening. Not long ago, Dean was like, you should come out and come drinking with us. And I was like, are you sure?
What happened to Midwest Weed Fest? I hope you're coming next year.
No, we should. Here's what I think. I actually set up a situation. Okay, so everyone thinks Samhain, thinks Halloween is the spookiest season. It's not. The spookiest season to most tribal people is in the dead of winter. Yule was the time you told ghost stories. Like if you ever saw, what's that stupid story with the ghost of Christmas Future and the ghost of Christmas
Carol?
Oh, yeah.
Dickens. Yeah, it was part of the tradition.
Yeah, it's a ghost story because at Christmas time, that's when we told ghost stories, because Yule, the middle of winter, was when everything was fucking dead. Like everything was dead. So they're like, you know what would be great? We should tell ghost stories right now on account of everything's dead. I'm desperately trying to set up a fantastic paranormal conference in lieu of, I said it, in lieu of, instead of Christmas. We go, we what? Roast a pig and like drink a lot, which was traditional. Christmas was banned in America for 150 years because originally it was a raucous, drunken festival that the pilgrims were like, that's filthy. I didn't care for that.
Not down in Jamestown, though. That would have been up in like Puritan land, right? Like
no, everywhere.
Was it really?
They were like, it's too dirty. They were like, it's too dirty.
Huh.
I'm like, bring the dirtiness back to Christmas. Can we have a filthy, gross festival where we eat meat and get drunk and have sex with strangers and tell ghost stories? Because that's what Christmas in America originally was, which is why Christmas was illegal for 100 years.
Good grief.
Huh.
100 years was illegal. That Christmas is nasty. Y'all are ghetto. I'm just saying that's what they said. And I feel like if that's the way it's going to be, like, I'm ready. I have a fucking
I'll be
recipe
honest.
for
I
it.
love Halloween, but Christmas is my favorite holiday.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there should be, like, I'm so ready to bartend for an excellent, perfect, real life, down home, original American Christmas where we all just like light bonfires and sacrifice, like, what? I don't know, cattle or whatever. Like, I don't have a cattle, but I could get one for a party and just tell ghost stories because everything is dead. It's winter time. And, just get weird with it. I mean, anything the Quakers were against, I'm for, is I guess what I'm saying. Yeah. That's where I'm at.
What part? I can't remember. What part of the States were you from originally, Heidi? Before you came, because you said you came to Wisconsin when your son was
Yeah.
born. I forget where you were from, though.
My father was in the military. I'm not from anywhere originally.
Oh.
I spent most of my pre-youth in Scotland.
Huh. Ah, that makes some sense.
Right. Yeah, the most haunted place in, like, the Northern Hemisphere.
Mhm.
And then I moved to South Carolina, which is also very haunted. And then I thought all those places have a tradition of being haunted. They have stories. They build their tourism on it. Come see our haunted castle or plantation or whatever.
Yeah.
Wisconsin is the creepiest place I've ever lived in my life.
Huh.
Every third street is just so very haunted.
Are you sensitive like Jen? Like you can pick up when you're
She raised her eyebrows.
I don't drink this heavily for nothing, Dean.
Gosh.
Milwaukee, I feel like, okay, how about this? Rural Wisconsin, for those of you not from Wisconsin or familiar with Wisconsin, Wisconsin is haunted from the Ice Age. The entire state was built on the graves of glaciers, and the people who moved here, who walked here across the land bridge from Asia, because whatever was going on in Asia was so ratchet that they were willing to walk across Alaska to get here. And then the Ice Age happened, and they settled across this land built over what? These limestone caverns rife with rivers that brought this energy to them that just drew the dead and the wicked. Because there are places in Wisconsin that are just wells of gravity, like black holes. I have seen some wicked, awful, mean shit in my life. Wisconsin absolutely knocks them all out of the park. I feel like the Pacific Northwest conceivably could be more haunted. I'd like to take a road trip of like 15 like-minded people in a haunted Winnebago to Oregon for the summer, where we, I guess, make mildly poisoned moonshine and look for Bigfoot and speak to the spirits of the exiled dead. But other than that, there's no other place in America more haunted than the state of Wisconsin. I stand by that.
It's interesting you're talking about the distant past in Wisconsin, because the driftless area to the west of me is an area which is and the glacial movements and things. It's an area which is just loaded with everything from Mothman through Bigfoot through Black Panthers. It's a crazy area. I mean, the
Can I
things that
tell
come
you?
out of there.
Can I tell you what I did for you for Halloween, Dean, as a special gift for you?
Oh wow, I'm curious now.
This is true. Because to be fair, Dean is I don't know. I presume it's Dean. Some 2 months ago, Dean invited me to be. He's like, "What are you doing this Saturday before Halloween? Getting drunk and worshiping the old gods? No, want to be on a podcast? Cool." I was like, "Absolutely, Dean. You're sexy. Jenna is sexy. Let's do this." I researched a bunch in preparation for this podcast.
Thank you.
Well, you know what? You're welcome. The area that you live in right now, all by yourself in the woods, is so occupied by every manner of cryptid things I didn't think were possible. Goat men, dog men, lizard men, frog men, men who are part frog men live in your area. There is a higher rate of UFO sightings in the Driftless area than there is in anywhere else in the United States, with the exception of Death Valley, Dean.
Good gracious.
You're welcome. It's the weirdest place in the universe. I think what we ought to do is have summer camp at Dean's cabin. If you agree, I think you should mention that in the comments and talk about how much you'd like to have slip and slide time and craft night at Dean's
Craft night.
because I'm 100% willing to finance that. I would love us all to build Ouija boards and go canoeing, I guess, at Dean's cabin. That's my big dream. Because Wisconsin is the most haunted place in the continental United States, with the possible exception of certain parts of not Death Valley, but the desert in between California and Utah, which I maintain is a gateway to another universe entirely. I think the Duatha Dudanan are the same people as the people who built the Zuni habitations, which are the longest habitated places in the continental United States. I think they're the same people. If you look at the myths.
And you mentioned the commonality with the Anunnaki before, and when you were talking about some of their characteristics, I couldn't help but think about the Book of Enoch and the Watchers that have very similar characteristics as well.
All of the myths, if you look at them, I'm a student of language. The fact is, I don't even really love creepy shit that much. I mean, I do. That's a lie. Actually, it really makes me a little bit tingly. The fact of the matter is that all myths are universal. All myths are universal. And if you look at the Anunnaki, if you look at the star people, if you look at the people who walk the dream paths in Australia, if you look at the Tuatha De Danann, their stories are so similar that even the syllables that compose their names, their stories, their heroes are the same. How did stories that happen in Australia 3,000 miles away, how do they have the same words, the same language as the stories that happened at the same time in Ireland, in what is now Utah, in what is now Nova Scotia? How are those names the same? How are those stories?
You know, I'll tell you something else real quickly. In the Book of Enoch, the leader of the fallen host is called Semjaze. Semjaze is also the ET that contacted Billy Meyer and other UFO contactees.
And that's the thing, and that's relevant, Dean, is we're not separate from our ancestors. We're the same people. If you are on Highway 411 and something fucking whack happens to you, you're not any different than some fucking red-haired kid in what is now what? Dublin. All those things happen to us at the same time. Humanity has only existed for 10,000 years, and 10,000 years is nothing. It's nothing. The
By the way,
pyramids.
I'm going to ask you a question quickly, Heidi. Jeff Addis just said that I look like David Paulides, and I don't take that as an insult at all. But do you think that the Paulides missing 411 stuff is somehow connected to the type of non-human entities that we're talking about being, perhaps, whether they're sociological or whether, let's just assume they're real for a minute. Do you think that perhaps the she or the fae or the whatever we want to call them from whatever culture are the things that are still making folks, I'm not talking about alien abduction where you disappear for half an hour. I'm talking about people who poof, vanish off the map.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to preface this by saying that one day marijuana will be legal in the state of Wisconsin, and Dean and Jen and I are going to get very high on the, like, I'm guessing the banks of, I want to say Lake Winnebago. You guys are going to love Lake Winnebago. It's so haunted. Yes, because they're all the same stories. If you look at the stories of the wild men, the people who live beneath the hills, if you talk about the people who live in the dream time, they're all the same language. The rhythm of the language is the same. And the odds of the rhythm, of the beat, of the syllables following in cultures that far apart across that distant of time, that is so unlikely. That is so unlikely because languages diverge so quickly. Like if you had a sister who really didn't like your mom, and so she moved to San Francisco and did a bunch of drugs and like became an advertising executive while your mom was still like believing in QAnon and like whatever. Those are two completely different people, but they're related to each other. And that's the way mythology is. That's the way language is. If you talk about Sasquatch, for example, you're talking about missing 411. I was talking to someone earlier about how people talk about like humanoid creatures from other planets, and how there's not just the grays. That's what everybody pictures. There's cat people, there's lizard people, there's fog people, like all of these people, persons, cultures who exist, and all of their stories and language somehow magically match with what? The stories and histories of the Anunnaki, the stories and histories of the star people from Australia, from the far American Southwest. All of these stories are the same. If you look at them for any period of time, they come from the same place. They have the same rhythm, which is so fucking unlikely. Think about Midwestern food. Look at tater tot casserole compared to fucking tacos. They're not the same. If you give like enchiladas to Barbara from Oconomowoc, she's going to be like, what the fuck is this? But at the same time, it's a casserole, baked with cheese and red sauce. It's the same shit. It's a different tune. It all comes from the same place. And it's because there's way more to sentient humanoid history than we would like to acknowledge, because it messes with our idea of what is who we are and what is who we might have been. And that's just human nature, is to ignore the magical, outrageous, and to acknowledge only the mundane and like the bobbleheads we keep on our desks at work. Like, but it is the same. It's the same shit always.
I think we ignore the importance of the imaginal realm and the things that perhaps reside there. But I also can't help sometimes thinking that this commonality cross culturally of these other entities that once taught us culture, the idea of culture gods. It takes me back to Genesis, and it takes me back to Enoch. And I wonder if these things were a third of the fallen host. That narrative Yeah, they were thrown out, and that's what came here.
This is what kills me. And I love that you keep referring to Enoch. I have this thing about I have this thing for Satan. That's real. He's naughty, and I like that. He's got like what? A motorcycle, a lot of cryptocurrency. Love him. Thanks,
He
Greg.
probably invented cryptocurrency for the beast system at the end. Just saying.
Satan invented cryptocurrency. What is Jeff saying? Do you think all the anomalous things are related? Are grays, elves, and spirits? This is what I'm saying, Jeff. I'm saying they're all the same story. It's the same story told from different cultural perspectives. It's the same exact thing. Samhain is relevant. If you are a very modern person, and let's be fair, magic, witchcraft, it's having a moment, is it not? It is a disco of the 2020s. Part of me is really offended by that in a very like goth kid. I was sacrificing virgins when you still thought that wasn't cool sort of way. And part of me is like, good, like, you're entitled to that. You're entitled to this like nature worship, to being connected to the planet you were born on and the trees, like the fucking fish, like whatever. And part of me is like, on a quantum level, if you look at the mathematics of it, we are all creatures that exist as part of a illusion, a hologram. Like they've spent a lot of time proving that probably our conscious experience is a simulation, which gives us a lot of questions like why and who created that simulation, and are we going to have to pay for upgrades because we always do and it's not fair. I think that it's all related, Jeff. I'm saying that let's hold on. What I'm suggesting, Jeff, is that we're all gods. That's a big statement, but true. And that we've been led by gods before us. Jen, you're so cute when you're drinking. Do you have shots?
No, I don't.
Jen, you and I are going to do shots.
Yeah.
At Midwest Weird Fest in March, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do it. Jen and Dean and I are going to go on a fucking boat and do mushrooms and talk about stuff. That is going to be the podcast you never fucking ask for and the best thing ever. Right? Isaac, come here.
I'm not going.
Come on.
Like,
Come on. Come on.
Okay, can I lay it out here?
No, just
Show
come forward.
your hand.
This is my child, Isaac.
Good evening.
Oh.
Hello, Isaac.
Hey,
Happy
Isaac.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Good evening to you all. I am very sorry I am not able to talk well right now.
You're doing a great job.
Am I doing a great job?
Yeah.
That's the question.
It's lovely to meet you, Isaac. But
Isaac,
was it
too.
Jeff's point? To Jeff's point before, I do think they're all the same. I think there's one projection system, and it projects different things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it looks like elves, sometimes it looks like Bigfoot, sometimes it looks like the Virgin Mary, sometimes it looks like a UFO.
And
that's a very simple analogy, but that's how I kind of think it works.
No, I think it's the same. Absolutely. And it's why I have a struggle with like racism is a problem. Misogyny is a problem. And I want to reach out to people and be like, you have a right to your spiritual connection. Yeah. Wherever it is you come from, whatever your favorite animal is, whatever, like, what is your favorite Christmas story? You have a connection to the spiritual there. And like you should connect to it. And all of this has been denied us. No matter where you come from, through sort of patriarchal system that denies us our connection to this older story, which is not to say men. I'd like to, like, Dean, you're clearly a dude's dude. I'd like to, like, right? You're a dude's dude.
My conservative / libertarian perspective.
No, like, right, libertarian, beardy, crypto guy.
We've argued post-show before, but we won't argue.
You, Jen.
About
I feel like Jen and I connect on a subconscious level in these podcasts, and it's beautiful. But that's important because once upon a time, men played a very important role in our spiritual connection to the wild God and to what that meant in our connection to wildness and our connection to our earthly existence, which is just our physical connection to this holographic, non-existent like illusion. And I feel like it's really important to acknowledge this, especially right now when the veil is thin, because that's what Samhain is. The veil is thin, just like May Eve. The veil is thin. The Fae come forward. The dead come forward. Our ancestors come forward to recognize that capacity to be connected to that which we don't fully understand, except through our feelings, our neural net. Who's talking to us? Mothman 46.
He's
That's
fantastic.
a bold statement.
He's one of my favorite listeners.
Yeah.
Great
Like
guy.
UFOs were called chariots of fire before flight existed. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Because we didn't know what that meant. Mothman 46. Can I call you Dave? Dave. Exactly, Dave. Because we didn't know, we didn't have language for it. And we as humans, even now, are just fucking what? Really fancy monkeys. Like really good looking monkeys. Jen? Really good looking monkeys.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, you too, Dean, but to a lesser extent, let's be fair.
Though I look more like a monkey. I got more facial hair left, in fairness.
Yeah, but Jen and I have put more work into it. Like
I totally understand.
Did you draw on your eyebrows before you came here?
Yeah.
No, you did not. And I love that about you. But let's be real. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because like we believe that those were spiritual things. It doesn't mean they weren't. Okay. You want to talk personal? Can we get personal for a second?
Sure.
You guys want to? So my father has a pancreatic condition.
That's not good.
He has to have a thing called a Whipple procedure.
Gosh.
Which is where they remove like a portion of his pancreas, a portion of his lower intestine, a portion of his stomach, a portion of his spleen. Is a whole fucking thing, right? Like that's serious. But also, we have the science to remove a part of my father's whole fucking shit. They're gonna re-plumb his gut.
Mm-hmm.
That's science. We have the science to accomplish that. Somebody has the mathematics where they figured that out. That's magic. You have to believe it exists on a certain extent or it isn't going to fucking work. And the chariots of the fire were the same. We believed they were gods, and so they were. Because they were so much more advanced than we were.
Just
And we are so much
incidentally
more.
about belief in medical health. There's a book by Michael Talbot called The Holographic Universe. It was a very popular book in New Age circles in the 90s.
Genius. Absolutely beautiful poetry.
It is. Well, I'm glad you've read. But you remember the case in there was somebody whose body was riddled with cancer and he was given a placebo and told it was a cancer fix.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Mothman 46 is wishing a father well.
He's
Okay. And he was told it was a cancer fix, and all the cancers disappeared. And the doctors were like, "What on earth?" And then they told him, "Hey, it was just a placebo." And they all came back, and he was dead.
Doesn't matter.
So it goes to show that there is there's something bigger than the physical.
Because on the quantum level, they have proved that physical reality, is influenced by the observer, not just by their opinion, but by the fact they were observed. That means something. Like magic means something that way. And Samhain, do you see I'm trying to keep this on theme, you guys? You're welcome. Is that magic is relevant in that it is about belief. It is about imposing your will on reality. I think this is why it fits so well with the libertarian theme. I don't know about you, Jen. I know quantum universe. Yes, Jeff, absolutely. Now, you and I, Dean, have conversed somewhat about libertarian theory. I don't know about you, Jen. I presume that you really adore this person who is very passionate about his independent will and recognizes you as a human being and also has really good dick, which is why I'm with my libertarian partner. Because let's be fair, the libertarian dick is not to be fucked with.
Oh
If
my
you had
God.
nihilist dick and libertarian dick, they're two completely different things, and then the difference is noticeable. That's because libertarians and nihilists are on the same wavelength, but one of them actually has a job. The point is that like your will imposed on the universe is real. That's real.
Mhm.
And what our ancestors perceived as reality, what they perceived as holy, what they perceived as sancted, what they perceived as mystical, holds with us. Because we're not mystical. I mean, we are. We have mystical tendencies. We have the aesthetic. We have what? Sequins, glitter. But what we thought were gods once upon a time were probably gods, not because they were paranormal, but because they were so high above us technologically, right? And I just, on Samhain, I think frequently of the Irish. Bless them. Can we just raise one for the Irish?
Oh, hell yeah.
Can we?
I'm Irish.
Thank you. Oh, Jen. Of
I
course you are.
am.
Christ.
Like I said, my stepfather in Sydney who's watching this is
Dean,
Irish.
stop it. Jen's Irish. We got it. The Irish were super connected. And I feel like this is partly because if you look into the history of the Irish, there's no proof of where or when the Tuatha De Danann came from. We talked about this before. The Irish are the strangest of the traditionally European people in that their history comes from a place that might legitimately be otherworldly. Because the history of the Tuatha De Danann is the best documented and the most odd, the most Marvel universe, the most Disney ass shit that ever happened. If you look at the Tuatha De Danann, they were talking about these people who would come from another place, and that was their land originally. Originally, that's where they came from. And if you look at the bog people of the Irish, are you familiar with that?
Bog people.
Oh, okay. So this is the whole ass thing. The bog people were people they threw into the fucking bog as a name suggests.
I do know who you mean. And they have the bodies and they're all
Right. So the bog is just rotting vegetative matter that has no oxygen and a high acidic content. So the sacrificial, like humans that they threw into the bog were nearly mummified. They're preserved in a state of almost perfection because of the nature of the bog. And so we know more about the Irish 3,000 years ago than we know about any other Irish culture. Yeah. So that's real life.
I'd heard that story. I forgot.
The history of Samhain is deeply tied in with the bog people because originally they said that they sacrificed a huge portion of what was good. Their firstborn children, the best of their yield, their kings to the bog. And they sacrificed them to this ancient Irish king who was meant to be one of the Tuatha De Danann. So they would continue to have good fortune. But the reason was because the Tuatha De Danann was the first people who were here. Everything about the history of Halloween is the history of Samhain, is the history of Celtic people, is the history of a whole civilization, a whole advanced group of humanoid beings that existed here before the humans we currently know, who only allow us to exist here because one Halloween, approximately 3,000 years ago, this was 1235 BC, sacrificed themselves so that we could beat the Dagobah, which is also the name of the people from Star Wars, because George Lucas is a bitch and couldn't come up with his original own shit. The Dagobah was the original name for the Tuatha De Danann. Thanks, Georgie. Like, what the fuck, guy? And Morgan met up with the original Dagobah, nailed that dude on like what? Some Saturday bender, and let him win. And because of that, they lost the world. and humans, the jumped up monkeys we are, were allowed to take over. But the Tuatha De Danann never truly left, which means on Mabon, on Samhain, which is 26 hours from now, they were allowed to roam the world along with the spirit of our own past death, because death isn't real.
Yes.
That's what happened.
Well,
but
it's Halloween now, though. We should say Happy Halloween.
It is. It's yeah.
But Halloween is Halloween.
In a way, what you're saying, though, is then perhaps that, and I'm not a Catholic, but perhaps no, I'm not. Believe me. I mean, I died in the wool.
You should be. It's very colorful.
No, I'm super Protestant in my outlook. But that said, then in a way, St. Patrick saved the Irish from any more bog people.
Did he, though? Because here's the thing. He defeated this ancient king with the 12 followers cast in silver and gold. Well, he was cast in silver and gold. His followers were cast in bronze. They worshipped this god in the liminal time between harvest and the time of death, which was winter. The whole idea of St. Patrick ridding the Isle of snakes was ridding them of the pagan beliefs. There is a myth where St. Patrick defeats this ancient king who demanded sacrifice in the time between life and death. He defeated him by first defeating his 12 followers and then toppling his monument of silver and gold. That was what St. Patrick did in Ireland. What's Jeff? Jeff! Heidi's my favorite drunk girlfriend I never Jeff, we can be a secret. It's fine. It's totally fine. You can come on the boat with me and Dean and Jen. It will be the best.
Yeah.
My goodness.
You'll love it. So he freed them of that, yes, but he didn't, because Catholicism subverted all of the stories of all of the civilizations that came before us. Catholicism replaced all of them with demons. So this character became a dragon, became a worm, became a demon. When before that, he was this character who, yes, occasionally you had to sacrifice your firstborn. I mean, I guess. But also, as in every single tribal culture the world over, he was the character that guaranteed your harvest, that you would survive the dark season, that you would live through the plagues of the no sun time, because he was opposite of the Oak King. The Holly King was the god of winter. The Oak King was the god of all the other times. He was the king that ruled over the dark times. And anybody can rule over good times. Anybody can be the king of spring break, okay? Anybody can be the spring of your fucking sophomore year of college. You know what I'm saying? It takes somebody with some fucking spine and a plan to rule over finals. And the Holly King was a guy who was king of finals. Jeff says, I was in Dublin for a week long time ago and pissed off a bartender when I said snakes were pagans that the patty chase off. No, but that's true, though. You're right, Jeff. That's actually the real life, real thing.
Maybe we should raise our glass to St.
Yeah.
Patrick. I'm joking. I know you won't
What?
raise a glass with me. I said maybe we should raise our glass to St. Patrick. It's not St. Patrick's Day. It's not St. Patrick's Day. Well, Heidi, I think this is the longest show we've ever done, because I know we cut it around the hour. I'm like, yeah, it's an hour and 18. I wish I had a Patreon, because then I'd say, okay, this is the end of the show for everybody else. Now the Patreon members can listen.
We ought to. Let's do that next time. Let's do that for winter solstice, because that's when the ghost stories really come out to play.
Yeah.
Heidi, you were absolutely enthralling, as you always are. How can people get a hold of you or look at the other things, the many things that you do outside of being the occasional guest on Talking Weird, who we adore?
I'm the co-host of Tease Weird Week. That's true. I'm Ghost Story Happy Hour on Facebook. You can also DM me. Apparently, I didn't even get to talk about the part where the internet is haunted. God, there was so much fucking.
Maybe that will be the Christmas show.
Should we? Okay, I love it. If you have a haunted house, apparently I'm the person to talk to now. if you want to rid yourself of that troublesome matter. But you can talk me. Underwear is $1,000. Socks are $250. Let me know.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be a number of our listeners probably reaching out now. But how do people listen to you on T's Weird Week? Is
Well,
there
you can
URL
find it on
or-
Podbean. You can find it on like the place where you go to pay Jeff Bezos, I guess, and like whatever.
Good
Podbean, I would recommend.
Yeah, it is on Podbean. And I listened to the last episode you sent me through where you were talking about haunted houses and you were talking
Oh,
about
to Hillary. Isn't she? You'd love her. She's so charming. Oh my
It was
gosh.
very interesting. But
Yeah.
listen, we're going to have you back, I believe, for
I hope you do.
for the Christmas/solstice show.
Oh,
So
let's do it.
I'm looking
I'll
forward.
do a ritual for you guys. Would you like to do a
Yeah.
ritual?
That
You know
would be
what?
cool.
I'll tell you a real quick funny story, then we have to go. And I'm not sure if I should even tell this story, but I'm going to. When we had when we did the last, not the last Midwest Weird Fest, the one before COVID, we had Greg Newkirk, who did the show Hellier, amongst many other things.
Yes.
And in Hellier, they do a ritual to Pan fully on screen, like it plays out.
Mhm.
I was so uncomfortable when I watched that in my living room before I played it at Midwest Weird Fest that I had to stop it because I was conscious a ritual was being played out. I'm like, I don't know if I want this playing out in my living room. Anyway, of course, Pan is the root word for pandemic. And we played that I don't know how many houses that thing screened in.
Oh my.
Very briefly before COVID. And I jokingly wrote that to Greg and he just said, what did we, or see, he made some funny aside, but I'm cautious with rituals that go over the television or over the internet. I've seen Halloween 3 after all. I don't want to play another trick on the
Must be
children.
mindful. As someone who is someone who puts a lot of stock in your will, you should be mindful of what you put over the social media. It's true. But Yule time is a time to acknowledge and worship the dead. I think it'll be appropriate and formal. We should wear formal wear. Dean, do you have formal wear?
The funny thing is I did own a tuxedo, which is in, I think I've lost most of my storage in Sydney. But I do have a suit. I have a black suit. I don't have a tux in America, but I have a suit, of course. My tux is lost somewhere in Australia.
My wardrobe is nothing but formal gear. If you can get a cummerbund, I'm sure Jen and I can screw something.
Well, I guess on that cheerful note, we should say happy Halloween to you, Heidi. Happy Halloween to all our listeners.
Happy Halloween.
And until next time, guys, keep it weird.
Keep it weird.
Keep it weird.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're interested in checking out more episodes, you can find us at talkingweird.com. If you haven't already, please like the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talking Weird Podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to Talking Weird. We're available on most podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you do enjoy the show, please leave us a review. Dean and I would really appreciate it. Until then, stay safe and keep it weird.